Well, good morning and welcome. Welcome to the Health and Human Services Committee. My name is John Arch. I represent the 14th Legislative District in Sarpy County, and I serve as the chair of the HHS Committee. I'd like to invite the members of the committee to introduce themselves, starting on my right with Senator Merman.
Good morning. I'm Senator Dave Merman, District 38, about 8 counties in the mostly the southern tier of the state.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Lynn Walls, and I represent Legislative District 15, which is Dodge County and part of Valley.
Matt Williams from Gothenburg, Legislative District 36.
Michaela Kavanaugh from Legislative District 6, Douglas County.
Also assisting the committee this morning is one of our research analysts, Lisa Johns. Serving as our committee clerk today is Noah Boger, and our committee page is Morgan Baird. A few notes about our policies and procedures. This morning, we will be hearing LR 368, introduced by Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. As part of this hearing, I have invited Tony Green, Director of the Division of Developmental Disabilities at the Department of Health and Human Services, to brief the committee on the DD consultant and the family support waiver required under LB 376, which passed last session. We'll then open up the hearing for anyone wishing to testify. For those of you testifying on LR 376, you will find green testifier sheets on the table near the entrance of the hearing room. Please fill one out and hand it to the page when you come up to testify. This will help us keep an accurate record of the hearing. I'm asking that you try to limit your testimony to 5 minutes. The light system will give you an indication. Well, I guess I'm asking you stronger than that. You'll be required to limit your testimony to 5 minutes. The light system will give you an indication on how long you've been speaking. At 4 minutes, the yellow light will come on and the red light at 5 minutes. These are study resolutions for information gathering purposes and not bills, so there is no record of proponents and opponents. Just as with legislative bills, comments for the record may be submitted online via the Chamber Viewer page as long as comments are submitted prior to noon on the workday before the hearing. And with that, we will begin today's hearing with Senator Kavanaugh's opening. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Senator Arch and members of the Health and Human Services Committee. My name is Michaela Kavanaugh, MACHAELA-CAVANAUGH, and I represent District 6 in Omaha. I appreciate your office scheduling this hearing, and I'm very much looking forward to an update from Director Green and appreciate him coming here today as well. The language in this LR takes a broad approach to identifying areas where our network of services for developmentally disabled persons, particularly children, is in need of further changes. In addition to the family support waiver, I'm eager to hear from organizations and individuals on how to further improve our safety net services for the families who need and use the services available, or where we need to create new ways of addressing service gaps. Of course, we'll hear a lot of workforce shortages and low pay for individuals who provide frontline services to persons with disabilities. I'm sure we will hear more about that today. I also hope we hear more about the solutions to these issues. In particular, I hope we learn more about the challenges and benefits of allowing family members who might also be guardian to be considered a provider. It happens in most states, but Nebraska policies and payment structure consider this scenario too risky. I had introduced this bill this last session, and it was actually heard in judiciary, not here. So this will kind of help this committee get a better sense of what those issues are. And we didn't move it forward at all because there was too much that needed to be addressed, and it's a complicated issue. So I agree that we need to put the safety and civil rights of the disabled individual as a top priority. However, if other states pay guardians and family members, then what additional safety measures or training do we need in place to do the same? I think the department is looking at fiscal agents that could be a step toward providing further safety measures and oversight on frontline workers. I hope Director Green can touch on that effort in his remarks. When our state made the decision to institutionalized decades ago, it was with the understanding that community-based services would be enhanced to provide services to our vulnerable disabled persons. Have we done that? In our continuum of services, is our continuum of services sufficient? There are some of the questions I hope to ask and discuss today. And with that, I will take any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Are there any questions for her at this time? Seeing none?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Green, you are welcome to come up and brief the committee.
Good morning, Chairman Arch and members of the Health and Human Services Committee. My name is Tony Green, Tonygreen, and I am the Director for the Division of Developmental Disabilities within the Department of Health and Human Services. And I'm here to testify on LR 368, which proposes an interim study to identify deficiencies and inefficiencies in Nebraska public policy surrounding disability-related service provisions. The Developmental Disabilities provides funding and oversight for the 4 home and community-based waivers, which include the Aged and Disabled Waiver, the Comprehensive Developmental Disability Waiver, the Developmental Disability Adult Day Waiver, and the Traumatic Brain Injury Waiver. These waivers afford Nebraskans who are aging or experience disabilities the ability to improve their quality of life through the provision of services which promote independence and community integration. The number of community-based waivers for Nebraskans will be increased to 5 with the passage of LB 376 last session. The Family Support Waiver will focus on children currently on the DD Comprehensive Waiver Registry or waitlist, and work started immediately with the creation of a steering committee and subcommittees. This fall, the division engaged in stakeholder listening sessions, received technical assistance through the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, and is currently drafting the new waiver. Creating a new waiver also includes developing regulatory, information systems, and technology and staffing infrastructure. The DD Advisory Committee, charged with overseeing and guiding implementation of this new waiver, has reviewed and approved an estimated waiver implementation date of December 2023. LB 376 also required the division to engage a nationally recognized consultant to provide an evaluation of the state's developmental disability system. The division posted an RFP, or request for proposal, for a consultant to complete the study, including Medicaid state plan services, with recommendations as to how Nebraskans with developmental disabilities can be better served. The RFP was awarded to CBiz Optimus on Thursday, September 29th, 2022. CBiz Optimus will complete a comprehensive analysis of existing programs and service arrays available to support individuals with developmental disabilities, traumatic brain injury, and children and adults with physical disabilities. Excuse me. This analysis will include a comprehensive list of all service arrays to include the 1915C waivers, the Medicaid state plan services, the medically handicapped children's program, the lifespan respite program, and other applicable supports to aged and disabled populations, to include an emphasis on maximizing impact, effectiveness, and cost efficiencies. It will also include a detailed comparison and analysis of Nebraska and comparative states' service array of Medicaid state plan services, waiver services, and other mechanisms to support people with developmental disabilities. It will include a detailed comparison and analysis of Nebraska and comparative states' registry/waiting lists to include eligibility, interim services, prioritization or funding, and removal, to include a detailed plan for elimination. An overall set of recommendations and suggested implementation plans to bring best practice to Nebraska and maximize resources for persons with developmental disabilities. And finally, any other areas that the department would find beneficial to the state in the assessment of its DD waivers, services, and supports. This final report is due by December 31st of 2023. I'm happy to be here today to provide updates on LB 376 and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Green. Are there questions? Senator Williams.
Thank you, Chairman Arch, and thank you, Director Green. Is the time frame for establishing the new family support waiver, of having that in place by December 2023, a reasonable time frame, giving you the opportunity to fully research that and yet getting it out there as soon as it should be or could be?
It is an excuse me. It is an aggressive timeline. Yes. I think until we start getting in and fully engaging in some of the technical assistance opportunities with CMS further, and getting to the hard part of actually writing service definitions and provider qualifications for each of the services, it's unknown whether the months that we've estimated at this point will become reality. It kind of depends what folks are really going to want to be involved in the waiver. So our website has the timeline kind of laid out of all the different activities of how this will take place between now and December. But to give you some perspective of what that looks like from the department, implementing in December of 2023 actually has us submitting that application to CMS in July of 2023. So we really only have about 8 months left to get this all figured out, because in order to implement in December, we would have to submit in July.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Other questions? Senator Walls?
Hi, how are
Good
you?
morning.
I have a couple questions. First of all, kind of piggybacking on Senator Williams, do we have enough funding? And do you think the funding that, is it adequate to meet the,
Specific to the waiver.
Yeah.
Well, the funding is that the slots for the waiver were limited in statute to the 850, and it does have a $10,000 cap per child within the budget. And I believe that was all addressed in the fiscal note that came through. So it was appropriated to what the bill had indicated it would support, which was a maximum of 850 slots.
okay. The second question I have is, have we given enough time, or no, I guess that was Senator Williams. What would it take for us to allow for paid family caretakers?
Yeah, so paid family caregivers, it's a complex issue. So let me first say, within the developmental disability waivers, we already have and do currently pay family members in some capacity to be caregivers. So for example, parents of adults 19 or over in Nebraska are currently being paid to deliver care. We cannot currently pay somebody who is legally responsible to be the caregiver. So if they are court appointed by a district court to be the legal guardian, we are not paying them. If they are a dual role of a parent of an adult and a legal guardian, that is not currently allowed today. Parents of minor children is currently not allowed
Okay.
under the waivers. They are options that states can choose to put into their waivers. And then there are many requirements. If you check that box in your waiver to allow that to be a practice, there are many safeguards that have to be outlined for CMS, because the fundamental issue is that CMS cannot pay for services that somebody would be legally responsible to provide anyway. So especially when you get into parents of minor children, you really have to begin to differentiate between what CMS calls ordinary parental duties and extraordinary parental duties. And states have to have policies, assessments, and practices in place to very clearly articulate, so that you don't move into the area of paying parents to do parent functions.
Tony, do you have any idea how many states are currently allowing for that to happen with children who are minors?
I don't have that with me today, but I know our policy folks who have been researching this since the passage would easily have that number, and I'd be happy to get it back to you.
All right, that's a good answer. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Other questions? I have one. One of the desires, as I recall, when we worked on 376 with regards to the consultant was, I guess the understanding that the layering of our waivers has gone on for years. And then we add a waiver, and then there's another waiver, and that's just kind of been the pattern. And we've done most of this work through waivers. Some states, my understanding is, maybe do a state plan amendment instead of a waiver, and that one of the things I don't see in 1 through 5 is the desire to make sure that we're also not only cost efficiencies, but also maximizing federal opportunities for reimbursement. And I know that would vary based upon a waiver versus a state plan amendment and the mechanism for that. Is your understanding that is part of the consultant's work as well?
It is. We actually had an internal kickoff meeting with the contractor a couple weeks ago. And in item number 1 there in my testimony, at the end, we had conversations just to that I believe you will get that on the maximizing impact, effectiveness, and cost efficiencies.
Okay.
Because they'll
it's
be
in that
looking-
language that
Yes,
you picked that up.
yes.
Okay. And the other possibility we entertained when we were discussing 376 was that is that maybe we do things differently. Other states are doing things differently. And so our current waivers that we have right now, I'm assuming if at the end of 23, when that report comes out, there will be further discussion as to their recommendations or your recommendations, the departments and the legislature. And then there would obviously be some need for phase in if we're going to change from these 2 waivers to a state plan amendment or something like that. This is not like, and then January 1st we'll have a new system for developmental disabilities in our state. Is that your understanding of that process?
I think that's an accurate assessment. As you know, the report will come in late December. Obviously, we'll be working with the contractor between now and then, and we'll have an idea of that. But until we receive kind of those final recommendations, that's really then when we can begin to have, if there's new ideas that they're bringing to Nebraska that they're thinking would work here, that we'll have to begin those collaborations with our Medicaid partners, because these are Medicaid funded waivers, or if there's another avenue, as you said, through Medicaid, which there are many avenues of waivers and demonstration projects, we would begin those processes. So I agree that there wouldn't be a new system up and running in January.
Okay. So the consultant as well, in their work, is going to conduct a series of interviews with those receiving services, families, and providers, and that list of those that they will need to contact has been under discussion as well.
Yes,
Right. It's not a matter of coming in and studying the documents. There's work to be done out in the community.
correct.
Okay.
And we will post to our website very shortly kind of the initial kickoff PowerPoint that we went through with our contractor that kind of outlines their timeline. It does include policy analysis and state analysis of documents, but you'll begin to see the stakeholder engagement process happen after January.
Okay. All right. Very good. Other questions? Well, thank you very much for your briefing.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for the progress. Sounds like we're moving in the right direction. We'll stay tuned. All right. Thank you. So I would invite testifiers to come forward and just so I have an idea as to how many would like to testify, if you could raise your hand. All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Hello, my name is Edison McDonald, EDISON, MCDONALD, representing the ARC of Nebraska. We're Nebraska's largest membership organization representing people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. Our DD system is failing. While the funding increases have been critical in stopping the most horrendous situations, they're still only a temporary Band-Aid. With a 1.9% unemployment rate and a severe shortage of staff, we have to innovate or our system will completely crash. Unless y'all want to add $2 billion to the DHHS DD budget, which I'd be okay with too. Key features of this evolution require expanding the pool of caretakers, including paid family member guardians, leveraging technology, professionalization of DSPs, and many answers we don't have yet, but we need to be ready to embrace. I've included copies of comments from a number of families on this issue to give you some context of the human impact, but as there are families here today, I'll stick mostly to the systemic issues and technical details. I also have expanded written comments. As I said, our disability system is crashing. While the provider rate increase has helped to address the most significant concerns in traditional adult providers, this means there aren't as many Red letters are letters that a provider can no longer safely serve an individual. As to service providers for children, there are currently very few. CRCC in Omaha is the only one that's more established, and they have a huge waiting list because of the desire for their services. There's also a place for us in Hastings, high hopes in Bellevue, and a new agency forming in Lincoln. While the family support waiver is still in the application process, we've begun a new task force to help with the implementation. Most of the provider needs will be things like OT, PT, speech, but where vacancies aren't as significant, and we don't need traditional direct support professionals who are the main staff we're short of. However, one of the most requested services is around specialized childcare. This will require increased staffing and blended funding models. So some of the solutions we need to be looking at: one, we have to make the ARPA rate increases permanent and set them to inflation without having to have us come back every single year asking for more money. Two, we need to expand the usage of abbreviated applications for providers who will be agencies but don't need to meet the same more aggressive standard for residential services. Three, we will need to break down the barrier in applications between DHHS Children and Family Services and the Developmental Disabilities Division. Four, we need to offer improved technical guidance, which the ARC has already taken some lead on and has requested that DHHS create modified trainings for. And five, we need to encourage and financially incentivize providers who better leverage technology to do more with less. And the most significant and immediate modification that needs to be made is to allow for paid family member guardian caretakers. Starting last year, there was a tremendous spike in the requests from our members for paid family caregivers as a reaction to the staffing crisis. This means that family members who have to take off work and frequently can't stay employed. Per the wonderful survey on the family support waiver that Director Green put out, on the top requested service for the family support waiver, with 160 of 375 participants listing it as a top need. So enabling more flexibility for independent providers is the only way to allow for more choice in the market and help to fix our system. All we need is a simple waiver amendment in section C-2 of the General Service Specification, subsection D, E, and F of the 1915C waiver application that is easily designed to apply for. In fact, only 7 states specifically prohibit payments to spouses, parents of minor children, and people who are legally liable: Connecticut, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Massachusetts, Nevada, and Nebraska. With such a high gap, it seems only logical that we lift this government prohibition. Despite a year of research and conversations with other states' leaders, I've found no evidence that this actually creates increased issues. However, to react to the theoretical increased risk, we have the following recommendations. One, create a fiscal intermediary, which the department's already working on and has ARPA funds to do. This has been implemented in 28 states. Two, require mandatory training created by the MCOs or the state, as 6 other states require, with a maximum of 22 hours of training. And 3, in addition, we already have service coordinators who are our frontline defense. Electronic visit verification that digitally tracks service providers, and we have inspections that already feel intrusive. Should other ideas to create reasonable protections are expressed, we would love to have a discussion. However, we have real people who are desperately in need now. Due to our changing workforce, this issue is only going to increase, and we need to help these families now. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions? See none. Thank you very much for your testimony. Next testifier, please.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Excuse me. My name is Andrea Evans, AndreaEvans. I'm a single parent of 7 children. I'm here today to testify in behalf of recommending the state's implementation of Legislative Resolution 368. in ensuring the increase in the ability of families that have children with disabilities to assess necessary disability-related services statewide and opportunities to eliminate the barriers to family member guardians as paid caretakers. What legislative resolution 368 means to my family and me. 1, ensuring family ties and the ability to benefit from being a paid family member as a family caregiver. 2, ensuring our family members in need of care have the opportunities to eliminate the barriers to family member guardians as paid caregivers. 3, ensuring appropriate policies and procedures that will protect the rights of individuals with disabilities who have guardians that provide care in order to minimize potential conflicts of interest without overly evasive regulation. 4, building trust that the systems have our family's best interests at heart. That was something that was big with me. I never felt that our family's best interest was ever taken to heart. The barriers my family experienced. 1, worrying about outside help that may not be sympathetic or attentive and caring for my loved one. 2, being a caregiver for a family member comes at a cost. I often had to significantly reduce my number of hours working outside the home and or leave my jobs entirely in order to provide quality care for my loved one. And that doesn't look good on your record. You know, they look at you like, oh, your family law really doesn't support us either. 3, I did not know my options for financial assistance while taking care of my loved one. That's another thing, not even knowing what's available. This lack of support and compensation for caregivers for our family in the areas I just mentioned created barriers that led to stress, trauma, and lack of closure and support for my son and the family as a whole. Ensuring the elimination of barriers to family members, guardians as paid caregivers would be helpful in ensuring no stress, ensuring no trauma, and the increase of support for families with children with disabilities. I recommend for the state's implementation of Legislative Resolution 368. Now, when I do my testimonies, I always try to add something that went well, and I really couldn't find anything that went well. So thank you for having us. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions? Senator Walz?
Thanks for coming today. I appreciate that. You mentioned that you did not feel that your family's best interest was taken at heart. Can you maybe give a couple examples so we understand what you mean by that?
I noticed that whenever I reach out for services, and I was asking in 89 for this compensation to happen for parents, and I kind of received the idea that they kind of looked at me like I was crazy, just to say. I didn't feel that we mattered as a family. The support from the state was very small. I mean, there were situations where when my child went to school, I had to be there. I had to sit there and be there from my job. And no one supported me in that. No one went in and hired someone else to even go in, you know, so I wouldn't have to miss my job being at work. If he went on field trips, I had to go too. I had to be present to go to these field trips. That's a lot on a single mother with 7 children. You know, I take accountability, you know, for my 7 children, and I'm not crying about having 7 children, but it was quite hard and I didn't feel support. No one ever came to me and said, these are some options for you and your family, you know, so that when you're missing work, because I cried about it, you know, that your job really doesn't seem to understand the need that your own child would have for you. You know what I'm saying? it would be nice if I was supported financially and even just someone telling me some resources out there so that I could get the help that I needed at the time. There's no one in any of these entities that I'm describing coming out and saying, hey, we've got this resource for you to help. So that's why I felt the way that I did. I didn't feel supported.
Can I ask
Yes.
another question? So, and you may have already answered this question, but one of the things that I'm really concerned about is communication with families. So you said you didn't have any idea or didn't know about the financial assistance or the resources that were available. Can you maybe give us some ideas on what you think is needed to help with that communication process? Are there things that we could do that would improve that communication?
I'll say this. When families come to the agencies, seeking things, I mean, and if there's nothing there, there's really, how can they support me? You know what I mean? I worked as a parent connector with UNL. We informed the research of empathy and vulnerability. And what we did is we helped parents to better serve their students that were with disabilities. And so we became a resource. We became, we're the ones that would give those families those resources that they needed because we would, research them. We'd hunt them down and make sure that families received what I didn't receive, that support. Parent Connectors program. We'd like to get that going back again. It was just a study. It ended in 2019. And I feel that it was a great service to families between Lincoln, Omaha, and Iowa. We served all of those communities.
Thank you.
Yeah, other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you. Did you want a copy of this?
You can leave it with, the committee clerk.
I'm sorry, I don't have any documents to give you.
It's quite all right.
But, hi, my name is Dorothy Acklin. My spelling of my name is DOROTHYACKLAND. I want to talk about choice. Choice is power, choice is dignity. There is one choice someone should always have. That is the ability to control who touches you, your belongings, activities, and choices. Taking away that is wrong. Wrong is an understatement. Taking away that choice is a power play. It says in my world, my disabled world, that you don't trust me or those responsible for making decisions for me. That is the greatest insult of all. Especially since the state and CMS both claim I have person-centered and individual choice in my care. Having a disability doesn't take this away. Neither does having a guardian. I should edit that. There are even human rights that a guardian can't take away without a good reason. It seems that there are even, oh wait, I just read that. It seems to me that those fundamental rights includes the right to control who is privy to personal and private information and who you hire to do your ADLs and IADLs. My biggest fear is my DSP or support worker won't see me, that they will see someone so disabled that they struggle with independent living skills. There is something profoundly undignified about needing assistance, any assistance, whether it be wiping somebody's bottom, or helping me with laundry, or even making meal plans. I have to let this person into my life. Often somebody I don't know with no choice. The undignified part is I have no choice. I need assistance. I have to work with this person. The state decided I can't use family members, not me. The choice is power and choice is dignity. Every time I choose someone to work with me is another who can abuse, neglect, and exploit me. Whether I pay them, whether the state pays them, or my family pays them. Some people I like may testify against this. They may think guardians or family members is more likely to get away with abuse, neglect, or exploitation. I don't know why they think that a family member is statistically more likely to get away with these things. Because here's the truth. I'm a vulnerable person. The state says so. My family says so. My family may abuse me, but so may the worker who I choose to hire who's not related to me. Teach me self-advocacy skills. Don't take away my fundamental right to choose who I spend time with. Keeping family caregivers from being paid takes away my self-direction and my ability to choose. If I want a family member, why shouldn't I or somebody like me be able to? Because I'm disabled? Because someone has a guardian? If I have money in my budget, why can't I spend it on who I want to? That's not person-centered care. That's somebody else, once again, making the decision for me. I'll be honest, personally, I don't want to use family members as a caregiver. This is primarily because I don't want my family members to know that much about me. The information I have to provide to my caregiver is personal and very private. Very few people are privy to that information I give my caregivers. I should have complete control over who's entitled to that information. Please give us control. Thank you for your time and for listening. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming to
Would you
testify.
like me to give this to you?
You can give that to the committee clerk. Next testifier. Next testifier.
Hold on. Good morning, Chairman Arch, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Brad, B-R-A-D, Meurrens, M-E-U-R-R-E-N-S, and I am the Public Policy Director with Disability Rights Nebraska. We are the designated protection and advocacy organization for persons with disabilities in Nebraska, and I'm here today to clarify our position and raise issues surrounding the family guardian payment issue described in the resolution. We recognize the significant unmet service needs of families of children with disabilities and families caring for elders. Our agency has for many years advocated for eliminating the developmental disability registry or the waiting list, calling out the impact on families who lack services. As the protection and advocacy organization, we are charged with protecting and advocating for the legal rights of persons with disabilities. As an agency that is involved in addressing issues regarding guardianships for people with disabilities, we have a particular and additional interest in this LR, and I will tailor my comments to that. Nebraska has some of the strongest protections for persons under guardianship in the country, and the state should be highly reluctant to throw open the doors to edit them. As we know, there is no guarantee that editing won't spill over into other areas of statute, which could cause unintended harm for persons with disabilities and their families. Paying family guardians sets up another financial incentive for persons to become guardians. Families need services, and if they can get paid for caregiving as a family guardian, why wouldn't they jump at it? Since guardianship is a serious restriction on an individual's liberty and rights, and since many guardianships in Nebraska are full or plenary, which encompasses essentially the totality of all the ward's choices, Nebraska should be very wary of establishing routes to increase guardianship. Paying family guardians involves clear and inherent conflicts of interest. Our concern here is not unfounded. In 2006, North Carolina ended paying family guardians for adult wards because of high costs and the inherent risk of conflict. Quote, a disabled adult's legal guardian must help develop and approve an annual care plan. It would be a conflict of interest for guardians to approve the plans and also get paid for implementing them. Paying guardians to care for relatives is a sensitive issue, said Dave Richard, executive director of the ARC of North Carolina. But Richard said the new policy is basically a good one. The potential for conflicts of interest is significant if the person on the front lines making sure that proper care is provided is also the one doing the work, end quote. Among other protections, if Nebraska would want to move toward this direction, they would have to determine, quote, things like how the provision of care by the family caregiver is in the best interest of the child, that the use of the family member does not create a conflict of interest, especially around finances and service planning, monitoring service plans for community integration requirements, determining payment is made only for services rendered, and put in place safeguards for abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Paying family caregivers can already be done within Nebraska's existing HCBS waivers. A family caregiver that is not a legally responsible person or a family guardian can be paid for caregiving services. There are additional waivers under federal Medicaid that could be used to alleviate the burden on families that Nebraska has not chosen to adopt. For example, the Community First Choice Waiver, 1915K, Self-Directed Personal Assistance Services State Plan Option, the 1915J waiver, and the HCBS State Plan Option 1915I waiver. These options, we would argue, should be explored and utilized before opening up the guardianship statutes. Perhaps educating families about the existing opportunities for family caregivers to be paid in the status quo would be a better, quicker, and more direct option. Paying family caregivers was proposed by Senator Christ in 2016 in LB 674. The Disabled Family Support Program is another avenue that could help defray some of the costs of caregiving that's already existing. The state could invest more money now that we have flush coffers into programs like that. And our concern here is amplified given that the root cause of the service crisis seems to be state funding as well as the low wages paid to human service staff, both of which drive the significant service agency understaffing and turnover. Nebraska should invest more in the human service systems in light of the current flush coffers and consider the wider systemic impact when making investments in disability services and systems. We're not convinced that paying the slice of folks that are family guardians would alleviate the scope of the problem in toto. That concludes my testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none. Appreciate you coming today and testifying.
Thank you.
Next testifier.
Hello. My name is Christina Evans, Christina Evans. My husband Andrew and I have 3 boys, ages 15, 13, and 5. Both our 13-year-old son and our 5-year-old son have been diagnosed with moderate to severe autism. Our 13-year-old has received waiver services since August of 2016, when he received Priority 1 funding for the DD waiver. Our 5-year-old son has been approved for the same waiver and has been on the wait list for services since 2020, when he was diagnosed. Because of the extra support my children need and the lack of childcare for children with special needs, I am a stay-at-home mother. We have worked with 2 agencies in the past for providers for my 13-year-old. Having 2 children who need constant supervision and assistance with daily activities, even with staff in the home for our 13-year-old, I am also needed to be home for our other children. We have not had providers in our home for 3 years because of inconsistent staffing and too many people that do not stick around for long. We recently moved out to southeast of Lincoln in rural Lancaster County, so finding staff is even more difficult for us now. With paid family caregivers, our children and our family as a whole would benefit tremendously. I am prepared and willing to take the necessary training and classes to be able to provide the same services to our children I do now on my own. I know my children best and have been their #1 provider for 13 years. I plan to be their caregiver as long as I possibly can. Allowing for parents to be paid providers would help address the staffing shortage and help families like mine be able to provide for their families. Thank you. That's all.
Does that conclude your
Yeah.
testimony? Are there questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Next testifier.
Hi, my name is, sorry, I may get emotional. My name is Andrea Cogley, Andriacogley. My daughter is 21 and has something, a rare chromosome disorder called Phelan-McDermott syndrome. She will never outgrow this. She's cognitively about 3 or 4. She is nonverbal and unable to care for herself. She's a joy. My husband submitted his testimony, so I hope that that will be read. But I'm here to tell you about my personal experience as her caregiver and her favorite person in the whole world. The care that children need begins long before they become adults, and residential services are available. I had a successful graphic designer career when my daughter was born. We were blessed to find a wonderful in-home daycare for her when she was a baby, but as she aged, she became much older than the other children. It became harder to care for her within that daycare and provide the needs of the other children. So we were faced with the question, what do we do? Our child is now not becoming more independent and able to care for herself. How are we going to provide care for her before and after school through the summer when there is no school? So we made the difficult decision for me to quit my professional career and be home with her to be available for her. I was able to continue to do some freelance and currently have a painting business, but it in no way provides a salary for our family. We've since added 2 boys to our family, and staying home has been a blessing to care for all 3 of them. But our boys are getting older and more independent, but Adeline is not, and she will not. It was a no-brainer when guardianship came up when she was 19. There's no way we would allow her to become a ward of the state. Not that the state doesn't provide adequate services for those who need it, but in our case, we wanted to be in control of how she was cared for, and she would want us to be in control of that as well. Then her residential services became available through DHHS. And yes, becoming a shared living provider is available for parents, but you have to remove your guardianship to do so. I can't tell you how horrible that was to remove my legal guardianship from my daughter. To the state, I am nothing to her, but I do everything for her, and I am an expert in her care. Everyone calls me to know how to care for her. I went through 50 hours of training to become a shared living provider for my daughter. Yet I still have to call someone who's never met her in order to give her a Tums for a tummy ache because I'm only a shared living provider. I am no longer her guardian. I can't tell you what that feels like, being the expert of my child and not being able to have both titles. My husband is her guardian, her legal guardian still. I'm thankfully able to make those decisions for her. But it has been a difficult and trying journey. However, we feel we had no choice. Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions, Senator Williams?
Thank you, Chairman Arch, and thank you for being here and sharing your story. I'm slightly confused about the guardianship with your daughter. As you mentioned, you had to be, if I understood your testimony, you had to be removed as a guardian.
Yes, you cannot be a legal guardian and a shared living provider right now.
But your husband is the
My
guardian?
husband is able to remain her guardian.
Are there additional guardians besides your husband, or is he the sole guardian?
Not currently. He is the sole guardian. We have no family available to help care for her or to hold that title or that responsibility. That's, a big reason why it would be huge if I could also
Sorry about
retain.
this question, but you and your husband live in the same household?
We do yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes.
So he has the responsibility of making the guardian type decisions?
Yes.
Okay, now I understand. Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions?
And that enables you to be paid
That enables me to be paid.
as a shared living provider.
Yes, correct. And so she is 21. I have not been able to have a salary or a full-time job since she was 8, which means I have not been able to provide for my family. I have worked from home. Trust me, I have done everything in my power to help support my family. But now we are actually able to provide for our future, which we have not been able to do until now.
How long ago did this change happen for your family?
Just in September, her residential services became available.
Oh,
But
with the waiver.
yes, the waiver became available. However, it took, I just began actually providing services as of November 15th. It took that long to do training, and it's extensive training that you have to go through to become a shared living provider.
Thank you. Senator Murphy.
So, thanks for testifying, first of all, but so since you're a couple, you can, you have worked around the, I guess, the regulations from the state to take care of your child or your adult child now, but,
In a way.
but if you were a single parent,
Mhm.
I don't see how that,
Yeah.
you'd have to hire someone.
You would
outside.
absolutely have to. And I have been a single parent. She was from a previous relationship. If I was still in that situation, I would have no choice.
Yeah, that would even be more difficult.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Martinez, C-A-T-H-Y-M-A-R-T-I-N-E-Z. Senator Arch and members of the committee. I am the mother of a 19-year-old named Jake who is profoundly affected by autism. He is nonverbal and has an IQ of 44. He relies on assistance for most of his activities of daily living. He can be aggressive at times, and my husband and I know proper techniques to calm and restrain him during these types of situations. He was born a healthy baby in June of 2003. In July of 2005, he was diagnosed with severe autism spectrum disorder. We enrolled him in speech and occupational therapy, which we paid for mostly out of pocket because our insurance at the time didn't cover that. That cost our family thousands of dollars each year. Then we enrolled him in ABA therapy, which cost our family over $60,000 annually for 3 years. Eventually, that caused our family to file bankruptcy in 2010 as a result for paying all of that out of pocket. He waited on the DD waiver registry for 8 years until there was funding available for services. We were fortunate that I worked from home because we couldn't afford to pay for any service providers for before and after school for him at that time until we received DD funding. He received special education services through LPS from 2005 to 2022. He is currently enrolled in the Independence Academy, receiving job coaching and life skills training. Having a child with disabilities can cause great financial hardship for families. As mentioned earlier, these therapies are often not covered by insurance. We've needed to hire an attorney to advocate for him when there was an error made on his needs assessment with DHHS 2 years ago, costing our family $4,100 in legal fees. We needed to hire a lawyer to create our special needs trust and update our will to account for Jake's special needs once we are no longer here. That cost us $2,500. We had to again pay for an attorney approximately $2,000 this year to gain guardianship over him on his 19th birthday so we could communicate with his doctors and his school. With that being said, our family is fortunate in the fact that we could pay for these services at this time. Many families can't. Our plan is to have Jake remain at home to live with us as long as we are able. We are the best choice to be his caregivers. We know him, we love him, and he is most comfortable with his family in the only home he has ever known. We know his medical record better than anyone else. We know his likes and dislikes. We know his triggers. We know his sleep patterns. These things people often don't realize, all of the different things that we have to keep track of. We will seek to be his extended family home once he turns 21 and no longer receiving educational services. At that time, we will need to change our guardianship once again, according to current state policy. We will incur yet another legal bill in our ongoing journey of caring for our child. Raising a child with special needs has taken a toll on us, not just emotionally and financially, but physically as well. We make sacrifices every single day to give him the best care. Sacrifices in our careers, our social lives, and the obvious, a financial sacrifice. Any parent of a child with special needs can attest to what burdens exist as a caregiver. Other states allow guardians to be paid providers. It just makes sense for us to do it as well, and it prevents further financial burden being placed on caregivers. Since Jake was diagnosed, we've been jumping through hoops to provide the best for him. The DD waiver, SSI, guardianship, special needs trust, IEPs, special education, the list goes on. I knew the moment he was diagnosed, it would change the course of our lives. We will be caring for him until we are physically unable to do so. We will never retire like normal couples do. Raising a child with significant impairments has been challenging at times, but we, like many, decided our child would never be institutionalized. He would remain with our family who know him and love him and can provide him with the best care. Creating legislation to address these issues gives you the opportunity to lighten our load just a little bit. Taking care of Jake is a full-time job. Very often, parents of children with disabilities must quit their jobs to take care of their children, causing loss of household income. Lack of trained and willing providers is another issue that compounds the challenge of finding adequate assistance and care. Appropriate legislation could provide these parents with a chance to still earn an income while fulfilling the job of caring for their disabled loved one. It's a win-win for Nebraska. Parents get to provide the best care for their child. The affected individuals get to receive consistency of care in their family home with people who love them. The state addresses an issue of lack of qualified providers. Please address these issues for Nebraska special needs families. This just makes sense, and please do what's right for the disability community.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee?
I have
Senator
a
Wilson.
question, thanks. First of all, did you say $60,000 annually?
It was, ABA costs $60,000 annually for the 40-hour intensive treatment that's recommended for severely autistic individuals. That was addressed in 2014 with LB 254 that was introduced by Senator Koash. And that service is currently being paid for in the state of Nebraska.
Okay, good. And then if you had been able to take advantage of paid family care, the paid family caretaker system, would you have still had to fight the legal battles that you fought, or would some of those legal battles been?
I assume that we would still have to fight those legal battles that we've already fought.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next testifier.
My name is Wade Johnson, WadeJohnson, and I am thankful for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. Most parents simply do not have the ability, the resources to come to Lincoln and speak. I am the father of an adopted 16-year-old daughter, Zoe, who has a big smile and feels the emotions of life deeply and is developmentally disabled. My wife, Adeline, and I started Our Place after-school care 4 years ago to serve developmentally disabled 13 to 21-year-olds. We wanted a safe and enriching place for her and others to go after school and in the summer while we finished our workday. In addition to our full-time jobs, my wife, Addie, an elementary school teacher, and I serve as the director of Christian education at Faith Lutheran Church. My wife serves as executive director of Our Place After School Care, and I serve as a board member of the program without pay. Countless hours have been spent learning about administration, marketing, fundraising, grant writing, educating, staff, and volunteer management, all to make our program a success. When we first started, workers from DHS informed us that it could not be done. Yet 4 years later, we are still here, stronger than ever. We are one of just 4 programs in the state of Nebraska outside of Lincoln. In Omaha, we are the only one to serve this population. For the first 4 years, we ran out of 3 classrooms in the basement of our church, rent-free. We have now moved into our own space and have added retail space in which we will train our clients in marketing items for sale and working in some of the store with the public. With the help of many volunteers and staff, our store and our consignments from local artists and craftsmen will help support the program. We wanted our program to be open up to anyone who needed it, for the parents to have the opportunity to finish their workday. So far, with many generous donors, we have offered a sliding pay scale and offered above average pay scale to our dedicated workers who serve faithfully. Students dropped off from the school on the bus stay until after 5 until their parents can come pick them up after work. We offer programming in math, science, social studies, gardening, community science, cooking, cleaning, life skills, and more. In the summer, we run from 8 a.m. to 5:15 p.m. Adult DD programs only operate till 3 p.m., which does not allow caregivers the opportunity to work a full-time job. Other providers have not served this population because they could not see how to fund it. I would put our program up against any other serving this population at any age. No good deed goes unpunished. This past summer, our daughter has been approved for the DD waiver after 8 years. We cannot receive funds from the state because my wife serves as executive director of the program and I serve on the board without pay. The program receives Zoe's DD funding. If the program receives Zoe's DD funding, we would remain unpaid. We started it because no one else offers this service and only caring, loving, crazy parents would take on such a venture. Other parents in our program are thankful for our service. In addition to our sliding scale, our level of care, we are much more reliable than independent providers in our community that they have had before. I get it. You do not want to make the most vulnerable population receiving good care. You want them to receive good care. Truthfully, this population has fallen through the 13 to 21-year-old hole. Families are facing impossible decisions to care for the youth and provide for their families. We have demonstrated that we can reliably care for our kids while employing caring, dedicated providers and giving safe, enriching activities. I ask you to open up this legislation to creative solutions like ours. State funding could be opened up our program to serve youth and families of more profound developmental and behavioral needs. Please help us to prove that it is possible to open up programs like ours in other communities in the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions? Senator Berman?
Yeah, thank you for your service for the community of Hastings area.
Thank you.
Do you, I've got to ask a question. So about what is the ratio? How many caregivers do you have?
Currently, we have 2 to 4.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks for what you
Wait just a second. There may be other questions. I just want to make sure.
I did have a question. And I'm sorry, I was trying to follow along, but this may be silly. You said that you were not able to get paid. Can you tell me why again?
Because it prohibits the services being paid to organization that we run.
Okay. Even though you were providing services to other.
Even though we're providing services to other children.
Okay.
Other questions?
We'd like to correct that in the state mandate.
Seeing none, thank you for your
Thank
testimony.
you.
Next testifier.
Thank you, Chairman, Senator Arch, and committee members. My name is Rick Nelson, R-I-C-N-E-L-S-O-N. I am the Vice President of Operations for Mosaic in Nebraska. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Mosaic is a nonprofit healthcare organization serving 4,900 people across 13 states in more than 700 communities. We help and empower people with disabilities, mental and health needs, and autism, as well as aging individuals to serve and live their best life. We primarily serve people in home and community-based services. In Nebraska, we support over 600 people in service and nearly 800 members of our workforce. As we reflect on ways to enhance services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Nebraska, the number one roadblock to the provision and stability of services is the workforce crisis. The provision of high-quality services and support requires maintaining a highly skilled professional workforce. Our industry has historic turnover rates in the last several years. For Mosaic, our direct support turnover rate is 89%, with a 30% vacancy rate. Our industry has lost the ability to compete for a highly skilled workforce, and our direct service employees have seen the competitive value of their important work erode. Historic investments have been made to close the gap between direct support professionals and other professionals in a similar level of accountability and responsibility. We are very grateful for the investment. However, the work is not done yet. The gap continues to grow with time and now faces a new challenge. Historically, direct support professionals have not equated to minimum wage jobs, given the skills required of the position. To maintain stability of services, the total impact of increasing the state minimum wage on the direct care for workforce must be assessed and addressed. We must look for adjustments to long-term funding frameworks that proactively adjust to compression of minimum wage adjustments and inflation to ensure we do not lose any gains we have made in the support for people with disabilities. As we look forward to the future of services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, we envision services that meet the needs of the person served in the right setting and at the right time, maximizing community involvement with high quality outcomes. Mosaic supports people in a variety of settings, including the personalized setting of shared living. It is Mosaic's firm belief that providing personalized services, such as shared living, to those who support their quality, to those we support enhances their quality of life. We support further enhancement and expansion of shared living as a personalized service to include the use of family members as providers. Any enhancements must and need to ensure they break down barriers of accessing services and not necessarily create them. We support implementation of agency standards without regulatory burden and that do not create unfunded mandates or divergence of resources from direct service provision. Standards that offer agencies the flexibility to determine the individual level of support providers may require them to provide those high quality shared living services. Mosaic is very thankful for the recent rate increases to disability services, yet by no means solves our staffing issues, our revenue shortage long-term, or the stability of services. Thank you very much for letting me share Mosaic's elevated vision for services with you today, and we look forward to partnering with the committee along with the department to serve people in the state of Nebraska with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Senator Williams.
Thank you, Chairman Arch, and thank you, Mr. Nelson, for being here. You have touched on a subject that hits a lot of areas: workforce shortage, workforce crisis, medical profession, teaching profession, and a lot of others. I want to explore a little more in depth so I understand it. When you use the term that your industry has lost the ability to compete, I think were the words that you used in your testimony. Can you explain how you go from, evidently, when you say lost the ability to compete, you were able to compete. What has changed that now has you in a position where you're not able to compete?
I'll try to answer that question without getting too into the weeds. It's a big question to answer. I'll use an example. I'll use my example. When I started in the direct service profession, I started as a direct support professional back in my day. I had the opportunity and the great fortune to move up in the industry. When I started in the industry, I was making $11 an hour. That was not yesterday. That was 25 years ago. Our funding and our mechanisms to compensate direct support professionals have been stagnant, and they have pretty much since the mid-2000s have really stagnated. States have increased minimum wage. That has also put compression, and that was in my testimony. I mentioned that really the competitive advantage is that we are now competing with minimum wage positions that we never had to before because of the inability to keep up or keep that gap. Nebraska is fortunate that that gap right now is roughly around 67% between minimum wage and the average wage for direct support professional. We want to make sure that we maintain that. With the increase in the minimum wage that is currently moving forward, that gap will significantly close, if not almost disappear.
Gotcha. This is troubling for, again, I think for a lot of things, not just your industry, childcare, early childhood learning, all of these are sitting there. When I drive by McDonald's in Gothenburg, Nebraska, and the sign is there, apply now $15 an hour, for a starting job. But that's where we are economically. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Mervin?
Thank you for what you do caring for disabled individuals. From your testimony, I was trying to determine, would you favor family caregivers being paid to take care of family members?
Senator, yes. Mosaic is a multi-state provider, and we actually provide a service in Maine that actually allows quite a few parents that provide services. So in our experience, family members can and have successfully provided shared living services.
Okay, so you don't see that as competition at all?
No.
Thank you.
We actually are a shared living provider agency, so that does the quality oversight.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
So
Senator Walls?
I just want to clarify, that was a good question. Thank you. I was going to ask that. But I just want to clarify. So a shared living or a family would still be working underneath maybe a provider such as Mosaic. They would still have to have that connection with a provider.
currently, that's the way the system
Okay.
is set up.
All right, thanks. I just want to clarify that.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next testifier?
Chairperson Arch and the committee. My name is Joe Valenti, Joevalenti. Let me start by saying the current system to care for this population is not working as designed or as you, parents, guardians, and others would hope it would work. As much as I support the system of parent caregivers getting paid, I do not believe this is the long-term solution to staffing crisis we have in our state and across the nation. The staffing challenges continues to be one which is not being met with even with additional funding, which was provided in the last legislature session. By current statistics, Nebraska is the seventh highest paying state for DSPs, with one of the highest turnovers of DSPs. I won't go into all my thinking on that right now unless you have questions. The concern I have with the additional funding, did it get to the DSP level? I do think the department is working to implement quality and accountability measures, which will help to understand the operation of the providers. One of the significant challenges is the middle management area of providers. I know you're not here to discuss that today, but if we keep avoiding really what I think and what others think is the crux of the problem with providers, I think we're missing just continuing to increase DSP wages. So one of the highest turnovers also is in the middle management ranks of providers. And this is causing then inconsistencies within the DSP level with providing the care that the individuals need, following their programs, et cetera. I believe we all need to explore other ideas and options for how we serve this population. The system of individual homes spread across a geographical area and community is not the answer. Considering the shortage of workers, which is not going to go away, the time has come to explore other options. Consolidation of providers, backroom services, specialized services, and other ideas need to be explored. It has been mentioned on several occasions the shortage we have in behavioral health, psychiatrists, nursing, other professional areas that are in dire need of additional staff. I understand none of this is going to be easy, and I know you've heard this term before. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I conclude my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions? See none. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next testifier. Is there anyone else that would wish to testify?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Jennifer Stumer, JenniferStuhmer. I am a mom. I am living this. I am learning this as a mom of an individual with disabilities. My son is 18 right now, and he was born with a very rare chromosome syndrome, deletion, a very rare syndrome that's impacted his intellectual, his physical, and his medical development. After birth, Damon was in the NICU for 7 months, and then another 7 months he spent at the Ambassador in Omaha, which had like 10 beds for pediatrics at the time. We had to do this to learn how to take care of our son before we could even bring him home. We had to learn how to do trach cares, handle a ventilator. He still sleeps on a ventilator to this day. He requires 24/7 nursing at home. And that means someone needs to know what to do if he needs it. That means we've had intensive training on how to care for his trach, his G-button, and all medical cares, all right? I'm mainly focused on the medical piece, but that's just a part of my son. All of this was due to a medical fragile state, and the only way that I could bring my son back was to learn these things. And then we had private duty nursing in the home. Private duty nursing was great as long as there were nurses, right? Then the nursing shortage came. Present day, times have changed. The nurse shortage was worse than ever. Damo still requires nursing and someone specifically trained to care for him and his cares. So he still uses the ventilator to sleep, and he's trach, G-button fed, low muscle tone, wheelchair dependent, prone to seizures and illnesses, and on many medications around the clock. I now have to utilize 2 different nursing agencies so that my son has enough coverage to go to school, and so that I can work, and so that we can also sleep at night, so that my husband can go to work. In the past 18 years, it's been a struggle to find a job that will support our family financially and understand my son's medical issues and needs. I've lost jobs due to my son's needs and having to miss work due to nurses not showing up, not scheduled, not being there. Damon is a nursing level of care individual requiring 24/7 care. There are 3 people outside of the nurses that care for my son that are able to take care of him. That's myself, my husband, and my mother. My mom's getting old. Damon's getting bigger. So that really just leaves my husband and myself to care for my son if a paid nursing person cannot be there. If we were able to be paid to care for Damon when the nursing agencies can't fill his shift, that would help offset some of that financial burden that we've incurred over 18 years of time. And this, it's the same trickle-down effect. If you can't work, you can't make money. If you can't make money, you can't pay the bills. It just would be nice to have, if we're working to keep our son alive, that we could pay our bills. LR 368 is an important part of what the state needs right now. With the current times of nursing shortage, unemployment, and families needing more medical-based care for the children, this bill will answer the needs of many families living with these tough decisions of what to do when there is only one person to care for their child. And I skipped. When there's only me to care for my child and I have to work and pay the bills and make that choice to stay home or to keep my child alive. LR 368 has been necessary for years, and now it's time to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Sorry, I got very nervous today.
Oh, it's-
I can talk for hours, and I would love to visit sometime. This just feels very intimidating. Thank you so much.
Glad you came. Yeah.
Good morning. So my name is Jennifer Mines. I am a wife. I'm a parent. I'm very emotional as well. So
Could you
I will
please,
try to keep it together.
could you please spell?
Oh, I'm
again?
sorry. Yes. Jennifer Mines, JenniferMeintS. So again, I am a wife, a parent, an advocate, and a professional in the community. I work in this field. I love it. It's my life. It has been for the last almost 20 years. When you are a parent and or choose to be a parent, you're excited. You know, you go to your ultrasounds, you are excited to bring this baby home. When I was 25 weeks pregnant with my middle child, I was told there was something wrong with her brain and that she would not sustain life. I was told when my daughter was 25 weeks pregnant to terminate my pregnancy. That would be the best option for her because she would never be able to have quality life at all. I am happy to say that my daughter will be 20 years old this month, and she is one of the most passionate, caring, lovely young ladies I've ever met in my entire life. During her first year of life, we had 23 specialists that we saw. She was born with a syndrome that only about 500 kids in the entire world have. So as parents, we were learning. Our other child that we had previous to Grace was a healthy young girl. So learning how to navigate medical systems, learning to therapies, Medicaid. You know, our daughter was in the hospital for several weeks. We brought her home. We had no idea what was wrong with her at that point because nobody had ever seen this. It was still very, very rare when she was born almost 20 years ago. So we were navigating, talking to people all around the country, trying to figure out the best way to care for our child. We could not both work during that time. We have traveled to over 7 states to try to find specialists that can help us with the areas of need for our child. We had to decide who was going to work full-time, who was going to work part-time, what were we going to do to help our family. We have struggled at times. My husband currently works for the school system. It gives him the opportunity to do what he loves and to be with kids and make a difference in these kids' lives. It also allows him to be with our children or our daughter when she's not in school. And to be able to care for her, take her to therapy, take her to all of her appointments and everything that she needs to go to. We wouldn't change any of this for anything in the world. It has been hard. It has been a struggle. But it has also been fabulous in the same way. We have been able to teach people things. We have learned, grown up together and learned how to get through these tough systems. I will say my working with the DHHS system has been difficult at times, just not knowing exactly what was out there, what could we do, what was available to families. What does the A&D waiver mean? What does the DD waiver mean? What is right for my child? When does this one end? When does this one begin? She is currently on the A&D waiver, and it has served the purpose that we have needed until now. We are currently on the wait list for the DD waiver, which will be more beneficial to our daughter as she grows and as she has learned how to navigate life. It is hard to find care for anybody on the A&D waiver. There are not any agencies currently, as you've heard from other parents, that provide care for A&D waiver recipients such as DD. You know, there's DD providers all over the state. There's probably 40 in Lincoln, Nebraska. There is not one A&D specific provider or somebody, an agency. So my mom, myself, and my husband are the only caregivers for my daughter because everybody else is nervous. What if she has a seizure? What if her shunt malfunctions? What if something happens and we don't know what to do? It's hard. So if we want to go out to dinner, if we want to go somewhere, that can't really happen because we don't have anybody that can take care of our daughter. If you want to get somebody, a provider, a care provider for your children, it can take, up to 3 months for them to go through their background check and to go through all of the paperwork that you need to complete to become a caregiver. So it's been difficult. I will say the department has been fabulous. DHHS, the DD division, listening, trying to come together, to work with families, to work with entities to try to make systems better. And I am very grateful for the leadership that has been open-minded. Talking about being paid as a caregiver, like I said, one of us has worked full-time, one of us has worked part-time our whole lives. Retirement, not a whole lot there. It's hard. But even when my daughter is 21 and could move out of the house, where does her choice come in? We talk about choice, we talk about person-centered planning. My daughter deserves a choice. And if she wants to live with her family, she should be able to live with her family. And it is
Excuse me just a second.
Yes.
The red light has come on.
Okay.
And so I would ask that you conclude your remarks,
Okay.
wrap it up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All I want to say is taking care of a child when they're older, still taking them to therapy, taking them to appointments. They can't go to social events on their own. So we are caring for our child more than anybody, more than a parent would when their child does turn 21. Yes, I will conclude at that time. Sorry, I could go forever, so.
Thank you. Questions? Are there any questions? Seeing
Sorry, I
none.
rambled.
No, thank you for your testimony very much.
Hi, I'm Shannon Utella. That's spelled Shannon. My last name, B as in boy, Utalla. I'm here today because I'm an advocate, I'm a mother, and I'm a guardian of a young man named Sam. And he has a rare degenerative disease that's caused deafness, blindness, global developmental delay, and it's a neurodegenerative disease, so eventually death. My mom always says, squeeze your butt cheeks together when you want to talk. So with that enlightening thing, it's like, do that and just carry on. This is an emotional thing. We've cared for this young man for 20 years, and he's going to be 21 in July. And I've been a fierce advocate for him his entire life. And last year, we had to decide between guardianship and being an SLP. My husband is a colonel in the Kansas Army National Guard. He also works a full-time job. I'm a realtor with Nebraska Realty. I manage about 40 plus transactions a year, but I wasn't able to do this until Sam was 15. Because in addition to his rare disease, he also had leukemia when he was 6. And so it caused us a lot of stress. And but we did what we could to financially pull together and do what we needed to do to best care for him. I have parents who are 81 and 82 years old, and they've been my lifeline. But last year, my mom had an accident that has caused her to lose her mobility as well. So I have a 120-pound child. He finishes school this May, and I have nowhere for him to go in terms of an agency level care that can provide him the same type of love and support and community outreach that we do as a family. So we're going to be faced with hard decisions. We made those for the first 15 years of life when I was a stay-at-home mom. The last 7 years, we decided for me to add into the financial health and wealth of our family so that we could build an accessible home. So we have a beautiful home to care for our child, to make sure that he has meaningful loving days every single day. We travel with him. We take him out in the community. He has a very loving, supporting, wonderful life that only we can provide. My caregivers have diminished down to one person, his bus driver. Now imagine that the only time I can get his bus driver to work is when she's not driving a bus. So it's very limited for us in terms of his care level because everyone else has fallen off. My parents are too old. His other caregivers have gotten married or had their own children or have other, needs to take care of. And we don't have anyone. And not only that, the agencies supporting, even people that are very, very honest say like, your child doesn't fit in our box. He doesn't fit in any box. So we need to take care of people like Sam. I don't mean to be emotional over this, but this is a very emotional thing for so many families. And we have sacrificed so much for the love and care of our children. The last time I was in this room, I was speaking on behalf of a bill for rare diseases to add to the newborn screening. And I spoke on behalf of those rare diseases. My son has that rare disease, one of the rare diseases that was advocated and passed so that we take care of our children. Most of us that choose to be guardians have gone through rigorous background checks, have gone through so many avenues for people to uncover if we're good humans. And we're good humans. I mean, I had a lawyer come and visit us at home and says, like, I don't need to look any further. The love and care of this home, it's pretty evident when you go into a guardian's home. And I don't think my husband and I should have to choose between being Sam's guardian and being his caregiver. Now, I learned today through this testimony that in fact, we could split this up because we had been told before that that was not an option for us. We could choose care. We could be an SLP or we could be guardians. And I learned something new today as a result of that. So I'm grateful for coming to that, to find that out. But the thing is, I don't think we should have to make that decision. I don't think that Rich and I should have to decide either he is going to be his guardian or I should be his guardian. I think that we should both be able to retain guardianship and still be able to care for Sam. If I don't want to do 40 transactions anymore in real estate because I want to live out my son's best days before he dies of this fatal disease, I should be able to do that as his mom and not have someone who provides him substandard care that knows nothing about him medically, physically, emotionally, and puts him at risk to care for my child. And he is, even though he's turning 21, he is still my child. And I've done this for 21 years. And whether or not you tell me that I'm going to be paid for it, I'm still going to do it. But the fact of the matter is there's no one out there that can provide as good of care for him as me. So I would like you to take a long look at the way that we provide. I don't think that all parents should be in positions of guardians. I do believe that there should be safeguards to take care of our most vulnerable individuals. But I best believe that I think that with care and concern, that parents should be allowed to make those choices to help make those family plans, just as I did with my college daughter who's serving in the U.S. Army and helping her with her college plan. I should be able to help with the college or with the life plans of my adult son who can't do those things on his own. That's all I have.
Thank you for your testimony.
Any questions?
Are there other questions from the committee? Seeing none, appreciate you coming today very much.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lisa O'Connell, LISA-OCONNELL. I'm a mom and a guardian of two boys. One is 24 and one is 26. And I am also a guardian of my nephew. And my mother and I share guardianship with my younger son and my nephew. And so we got the same situation as everybody else here with the care and stuff. But like my youngest one, he has type 1 diabetes, and that's a full-time job of keeping that under control. I mean, numbers go up to 300 plus, boom, into the hospital. Adjustments on insulin, you name it. And they both got the capacity, all three of them, about 3 to 15 years old. And now my oldest one, he's been into this very sneaky, defiant type of behavior and getting himself into all situations that actually with guardianship rules, it's like you're stuck, on certain things. And he's actually went to Marshalltown, Iowa, when he met somebody off the internet, and I tried to get him back. I could, but it was just such a long process. And that would say that I took the 4 hours to go there all the time to see if he's okay. I even called the officers to do well checks on him to see if he's okay. But in his mind, he is not stable enough to do that. And it's just with the guardianship, I can't say, okay, you're stuck here. You're gonna have certain rules that we have to follow. And I actually also, I volunteer and work at an agency in Fremont. It's uniquely U.S. Stability Support. And so we deal with the dynamics of homelessness, trying to keep people in their homes and stuff. And I have a lot of people that come in with all these issues. So they're always calling me even after hours to find out, what do? I need help. And, it's like, unless anybody has ever been in this situation, like any of you ever have been in this situation, and don't understand it, I would like you guys to actually go pair up with somebody that has special needs kids for a day or two and see what it's like. Because until you walk in this world, there is no way that you should judge a no on this kind of bill. I would say yes, because until you do this, you have no clue of what it takes day in and day out to deal with this, doctor's appointments and you name it. Like everybody's saying, I've got the same thing. My calendar is so full that it's so hard to even have 5 minutes to yourself. So basically, I'm all for this. And like I said, my wish is to have somebody actually go and spend time with people so they do understand and can really learn what it is to have somebody that has 3 children that are young adults, but they're still children. And then still having to go back and forth to court. That's what I'm doing with my oldest one with some of this legal things, because he's like, oh, I wanted to have this dropped and everything, but it will never happen because I've got the fullest. There's all different levels of guardianship. And he's so defiant, so sneaky, and it's like he can't do certain things because it's the rules. And so it's just a lot of different stuff. And yes, I went through all the training and everything else. So my final say is that this is a good bill, and I would like to see it be passed for people, because it's not fair when somebody has to choose and cannot work, and then they say if they're on benefits or anything, then they can't get anything if they start working, or they're just right between the cracks. And so one thing too with this, with the paid part of it, I would like to see that it doesn't affect people's benefits, because that would be the biggest thing. And I'm speaking from reality because I have all this. I'm under the 200% poverty line. So I am right there with them. So, but thank you for listening to me blab.
Thank you for your
Thanks.
testimony. Are there any questions?
Okay.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Mary Phillips, Mary Phillips. I am here to speak a little bit, to give you guys a little bit of a summary of today, because I spend my entire life supporting families and children with disabilities. I'm a retired special education administrator in both rural and urban school districts and populations, and I'm a parent. I have a 34-year-old daughter who has had developmental disabilities all of her life. She attended school birth through the year she turned 21. We were those parents that pushed for full inclusive opportunities in the community and in school, and she benefited greatly from that. While she does have a developmental disability now, she's fully immersed into DHHS DD waiver, lives in an extended family home, works part-time with job coaching, and she's, by all means, one might say, very successful as an individual with a disability. However, there are still so many gaps and barriers to her care. You guys have had quite an education this morning, right? You've heard from a lot of families who are sharing the sacrifices that they have made, self-advocates who are asking for choice. You will probably hear from other folks advocating on behalf of providing more opportunities for families to have voices in the care of their loved ones as they age and mature and become adults. And we have volunteered in that capacity for the last 15 years since our daughter reached age of majority, because that's what people do. So we have been transportation when transportation was needed. We have been the medical care when medical care was needed. We have been able to maintain her as an incapacitated adult child on our insurance so that she can have that supplemental care of a gas for a dental appointment because of her anxiety. All of those types of things happen because really there was no pay for us. We didn't ask for pay. We didn't even think that there would be a possibility of pay. We did it because it was the thing that you do. And all of these families you've heard from, everything they do because it's the thing that you do when you're raising a child with a disability. With great sacrifice. Some people can bear that sacrifice much better than others. I represent hundreds and hundreds of families that do not have children with low incidence disabilities that you've heard about today, that have made those types of sacrifices, who may not have the same abilities that I have educationally, with the background in knowing special education, with the resourcefulness to go and seek out answers that I don't know what the answers are. We need to support those folks because they don't have the wherewithal to go do it. And that's your job. That's your job, to find out a way to support those folks legislatively so that they have the choice, and the self-advocates have the choice to decide, where am I getting my care and what will it look like? And it's not just something that we're placing our most vulnerable citizens at the disposal of people who do not know them at all, to support them in ways that they believe, probably with the best of intent, is the best for that individual, when it may or may not be, because we have taken out of the equation those that know the people best. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next testifier.
Hi, my name is Elena Shriver, ALANASCHRIVER, and I wasn't prepared to testify today, so I apologize to not have a written statement for you. Not only am I a parent of a 10-year-old with developmental disabilities, but I'm also the director of the Nebraska Association of Service Providers, which is the state trade association for those home and community-based agencies serving adults with developmental disabilities currently. So I'm happy to answer questions from either hat that I wear. But my question as a parent is one of more of logistics. I know with my son, his diagnosis came about from a catastrophic infantile epilepsy. And so I didn't know during my pregnancy or have a lot of time to prepare. And we were told he was going to regress to a vegetative state. So dad bounced and it was just me. And you don't have time. The way that the registry is now, you know, my son's already on the registry for adult services. He's been on since he was 9, because as many parents said here today, the wait list is typically around 8 years or longer. So of course I'm pro-choice. Anything we could do to speed that up by getting parents as guardians is going to be helpful. But when you first find out that your child's diagnosed, you need that money now. You know, you can't wait 8 or 9 years on a wait list for childcare or some other solution. And a lot of those people on the wait list ahead of you won't want to be paid parent guardians. They're going to want home and community-based services. And so until those spots open up in those home and community-based services, the line sort of gets halted. And as my colleague Rick Nelson mentioned, we are in a staffing crisis. We're not on the verge of a crisis in care. We are in the middle of a crisis of care, not just in Nebraska, but the whole country. In Nebraska, it's exacerbated by our ridiculously low unemployment rates. There's 8 jobs for every 1 person looking for a job. But until we actually address the staff shortages, we did an internal survey at NASP to see if those rate increases were able to alleviate some of those stressors for our providers. And not every provider in the state is in NASP. We have about 40 some people in NASP right now, but the largest amount of people in services are served by NASP providers. And even though 100% of our providers were able to raise DSP wages and then address that compression that comes along with that, we are still over 80% of our members are having to deny referrals for new people coming off the registry into services, and over 50% are still having to cut services and programs due to short staffing. So while the historic rate increases was an absolute godsend and caught us almost back up to the starting line, I think a lot of people think that 15 plus 2% permanent plus the ARPA was from starting forward, but we actually had a lot of ground to make up due to the pandemic. And so it kind of got us to where we needed to be last July. But in order for us to remain or try to be competitive in this market, let alone expand into services for kids 13 through 21 that I know as a parent we desperately need. My kid's been kicked out of God knows how many daycares. It's a moot point until we get services for home and community-based providers up to the level of support financially that they need to provide high quality services and get that training and address the turnover and help people feel confident that they know how to do these difficult jobs and they're prepared to do these difficult jobs so that we don't have the crazy high turnover and that the people in services know who's coming to their house that day. Happy to answer questions from either the parent side of it or the service provider end. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Well, thank you for, while not being prepared, excellent testimony.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify today? Seeing no one else, Senator Kavanaugh, you're welcome to close.
Thank you, Chairman Arch and members of the committee. Thank you so much for being here today and listening to these important testifiers. I want to say thank you to Director Green for coming and giving us all an update on where we're at with the waivers. I think it's clear that we have a workforce shortage. We need it in every industry, but when we're talking about our most vulnerable populations, this is an industry that we should be definitely paying a lot of attention to. And hopefully in the next legislative session, we can work together as a body to create a dedicated plan to see how we can increase the workforce in this particular industry. Because obviously our most vulnerable people need to be taken care of and should be taken care of. So, you know, I appreciate everyone coming in. This is not something that's going to be solved quickly or easily. It's going to take a lot of diligent work and purposeful thought in how we do it. And I'm just very grateful to this committee for having invested so much time and energy into this population over the last several years. And on a personal note, I have enjoyed sitting next to Senator Williams for 4 years, even though he squeaks his pen, and I remind him not to so that the transcribers don't get mad. But it has been a pleasure and an honor, and I know that this is our last day of hearings together, so thank you for your service.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Any questions? Seeing none? Senator Williams has some question.
Thank you, Chairman Arch. And I don't have a question, but I have a comment that I would like to make. So thank you for coming today and helping this committee. I will tell you, and Director Green, you know this, I think the vast majority of Nebraskans don't know what you go through. They have no way of knowing that. We sit here on this committee and we do hear these stories, and they do make a difference, and your advocacy is clearly important. And being a crazy loving parent is what we hear a lot of stories about. I think your challenge is to not only tell it to this committee that does have the ability to do something about it, but be advocates outside of that so more people in this state do understand the dilemma that we are in. If I've learned anything in 6 years on this committee, is that there is never going to be enough money to go around and fix all these problems, and money doesn't fix them all anyway. But being crazy loving parents does. So thank you.
Well said.
Thank you, Senator Flynn.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. With that, we will conclude the hearing on LR 368. The committee will recess until 1 o'clock, where we will hear 3 more LRs this afternoon.